Kevin McCarthy should not seek re-election and definitely should not become Speaker of the House. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is another declaration of truth from your host, Terry A. Hurlbut. You didn't really think that I would let Kevin McCarthy skate on his latest gaffe, did you? We're going to look at what he said, how he tried to deny it, how the New York Times nailed him to the wall dead to rights, and the real reason he needs to resign, as floor leader at least, and why he should never be Speaker. First, I want to shout out to the sponsor of this channel, which is Conservative News and Views, link in the description. And be sure to check out the awesome CNAV Store. Scroll down to the bottom for that link. Lots of good merchandise there, including this t-shirt. Rhino hunting. Very apropos, wouldn't you say? And I want to remind you, I am a published author. Look for 2 new books, Matthew's Run and Matthew's War, available right now at Amazon and Barnes & Noble, to name 2. They tell the story of what our country and our world might look like after 380-odd years of wokeness, and about a cyborg with a conscience who also just doesn't like to be used, leading a rebellion against it. And soon you'll be able to buy those books right in our store. All right, ladies and gentlemen, the informal Committee of Standards of Republican Party Conduct is now in session. Republicans have comfortably assumed that Representative Kevin McCarthy of California, their floor leader, has the interests of the country and their party at heart. If his conversations with Representative Liz Cheney of Wyoming are any indicator, that is not true. On January 10, 2021, Kevin McCarthy clearly said to Liz Cheney that if he had anything to say to then-President Donald J. Trump, it would be to urge him to resign. Articles of impeachment, he said, were sure to pass after the January 6 event. What he did not say was that the Senate would never muster the 2/3 to convict Trump on the charges. But I digress. Not only did Kevin McCarthy say that, but he also called for several prominent Republicans to lose their Twitter and Facebook accounts, as Trump had. At the time, McCarthy denied having said any of this. I have a link in the description to video of his giving that denial to a reporter on January 13th of last year. Fast forward to 2 days ago. The New York Times broke the story of that conversation with Tin-Eared Lizzie. Specifically, they carried a story by Jonathan Martin and Alexander Burns, who were promoting their book titled This Will Not Pass. In it, they shared all the bloody, gory details I have just shared with you. Kevin McCarthy, on his Republican leader's Twitter account, flatly denied the story. I have a link in the description to that too. Briefly, he tried to deflect. And if it was anybody but Kevin McCarthy saying these things, I would have to agree with him. He spoke of the corporate media doing all it could to further a liberal agenda. He reminded everybody that these 2 guys were promoting their book. Now, he also asked why they didn't ask him about that conversation when the book was going into print. I have no independent information on that at all. I'm just quoting the guy. He also reminded everybody that the country was better off under Trump. True, no matter what anybody says. And the corporate media were more interested in ginning up infighting in the Republican Party than in addressing real issues. Also true as far as that goes. And if you're wondering how he got all of that into a tweet, he didn't. He put it into a graphic and shared the graphic in the tweet. If you go to my original article, and I have a link to the description of that as usual, then you can read the whole message. But here's the problem. He was lying through his teeth when he said the story was bogus. And late last night, Rachel Maddow shared the audio of that conversation on her show on MSNBC. Well, you can bet the Times carried that story too. So did NPR and one of its affiliates. CNN, USA Today, and Politico all have weighed in. So has Gateway Pundit. Twice. Meanwhile, Kevin McCarthy has maintained near absolute silence. But other members of Congress have not kept silent. Representative Adam Kinzinger of Illinois reported on the denial, then the verification of McCarthy's words. Republicans, he said, your leaders think you're dumb. Now, bear in mind, this guy is supposed to be a Republican himself. But he and Tin-Eared Lizzie sit on that kangaroo court Bill of Attainder January 6th committee. But sadly, that doesn't make his words any less true. And former Representative Laura Loomer from Florida said this was, quote, the only time I will ever agree with Adam Kinzinger, unquote. She called for Kevin McCarthy to resign and announced her opposition to McCarthy and Cheney. She also added Kinzinger, but of course Kinzinger is not seeking re-election. And that's because the Democratic legislature drew his district away where the state of Illinois lost a district in the census. Representative Matt Gaetz, also of Florida, had a really furious response. I have a link to that on Twitter. You know what really made him angry? Just this. While Gaetz was defending Trump and other Republicans against censorship, Kevin McCarthy called for such censorship. That's worse than what he said he would tell Trump. Did he say anything like that to President Trump? We don't know whether he did or he didn't. Now, CNN's opinion contains their usual snidery. To them, Trump is the only politician who can succeed without building a reputation for credibility. Having said that, we must observe what else CNN's asked. What else is Kevin McCarthy lying about? Jack Schaefer of Politico seems to think McCarthy will skate on this. He seems to think all McCarthy need do is grovel to Trump. And he also thinks he's already done that. The problem is Schaefer cited only Kevin McCarthy's most recent denial. He has not treated the situation after Rachel Maddow and others aired the playback. Jim Hoft at the Gateway Pundit gives a blunt assessment. He's finished. Well, he certainly ought to be finished. Kevin McCarthy proved that he is a rhino, a Republican in name only, like this t-shirt says. Representatives Loomer and Gaetz have called it. A floor leader does not call for the usurpers of a public square to banish other members from his own party from it. Nor does he call on a president to resign over a false flag pseudo-event, which January 6 was. Kevin McCarthy did both. Other influencers have observed as well that the liberal media, thinking to embarrass Republicans, have only embarrassed one person who will now face removal from leadership, and justly so. Links to the description to the article, to 4 videos containing McCarthy's words and appropriate commentary on them, to Kevin McCarthy's 2 denials, to Laura Loomer's rebuttal on Telegram, Matt Gaetz' rebuttal on Twitter, and to Conservative News and Views. I have another link to the awesome online store, as I mentioned. And if you like what you've heard, you can like this video and subscribe to this channel. This is Terry A. Hurlbut delivering another declaration of truth and reminding you to let the truth set you free.